Okay, so today I'm going to talk about how we as software engineers can help data engineering. I would like to do my presentation. But before I start, I would like to know my audience a little bit more. So please raise your hands who have ever destroyed a production database. That's interesting. There are people who didn't raise their hands, so please visit our booth. I would like to talk with you how it's possible. Let me tell you a story of data engineers. They are actually my colleagues, Marek, Teresa, and Eva. They have quite a good business knowledge about CRM and other stuff. And they also know SQL, but they are not software engineers. Yeah? They don't know the best practices, nothing like that. And what they need to build internal BI project for GoodData, which means they need to build end-to-end data pipeline, collecting data from many sources and ending up with some dashboards and custom data application. They want to be safe in their environment. And ideally, they don't want any vendor lock. If they decide they want to change, for example, their data warehouse technology. And then there is Jacek, that's actually me. Jacek is a software engineer and knows the best engineering practices. And his need is to satisfy Marek, Eva, and Teresa and stay lazy. Yeah, so basically onboard them and then go for vacation. I prepared a blueprint for these people, for data engineers, so they can work alone without me. And this is the blueprint architecture. So starting from the left, there are data sources which we want to download data from. And we need to ingest that into a data warehouse and do an analytics on top of that. And we want to do it in multiple environments, specifically in local environment, in development, in staging, and in production. Have the meaning. So when you develop a data pipeline, you can iterate as fast as possible locally. Then you create a pull request. In my case, it's in GitLab, but it could be in GitHub. And it's delivered into development environment, which is already in cloud. So the code reviewer can not only review the code, but he can also experience live environment corresponding to this pull request before merge. And after merge is delivered in staging, it can be tested by business people, and finally to production. The blueprint also contains some example data applications, custom data applications, which are delivered either to Streamlit or to render.com. So basically, you can create a pull request which contains new artifacts which should be downloaded, which should be loaded to the warehouse, which should be transformed. You can also specify reports and dashboards, and you can even change a custom data application. Everything this in a single pull request. So when you deliver it, it's consistent and it's consistently tested end to end. Okay, so what's most important for the onboarding? Documentation. Yeah, so I wrote a very large README file, which is part of the repository, obviously. And there is a very concise onboarding guide.
for both local development as well as how to deliver changes into the cloud. Specifically, people are working with artifacts like YAML files, dbt models, obviously, with a few of Jinja, and with GoodData artifacts, which are basically also YAML files. And CI/CD pipeline in GitLab is nothing else than human-readable YAML file. Everything this is something which is simple enough for these data engineers so they can maintain it and expand it without me. Okay, nothing is better than real example. I need to speed up a little bit. So, real example. I wanna get from this to this. So this is the current state. This is actually some kind of analytics from GitHub, meaning there are some statistics about commits, merge requests, users, and so on, repositories. And what I want to add is analytics about workflows. These are basically jobs running in GitHub or GitLab. And moreover, I want to add 2 additional headline reports to this dashboard. So what does it mean? So extracting and loading the data, what I have to change? I have to change one line, nothing more. I just need to specify new data set which should be downloaded from GitHub API, workflow runs. And I want to crawl all columns. I don't need to optimize it and specify a certain subset of columns. That's all. This is actually a configuration of Meltano component, Meltano project, which is similar. It's not that known, by the way. It's something like Airbyte or Fivetran. There are other competitors in this area. But I decided to go with Meltano because it's simplest to maintain, and it's also most lightweight solution. Airbyte is really heavy. You have to start so many Docker containers and so on. Meltano is simple CLI you can run anywhere, and it's very fast. Then I need to transform the data because I downloaded them from GitHub API, so there are some JSONs and the quality of the data is not that good. Thanks, Microsoft. So we need to transform this data. On the left side, there is standard dbt model. The only complexity there is that I implemented an incremental load, so only new workflow runs are downloaded. And on the right side, there is dbt schema YAML file. Why we need to specify it? Actually, this is because GoodData. We need to specify which columns we need to use in the analytics. And what we also can specify additional metadata which are used by our analytics platform. And why you should invest into this? The answer is it is worth doing it if you need to expose the solution to business end users who should be self-service. Yeah, so this is quite similar to these data engineers, Marek, Eva, and Teresa. I want them to be self-service. That's why I created this blueprint. And this is how I can make self-service their audience, meaning business end users. So I can specify what is attribute, what is fact, if there are some kind of relationships between data sets. And then in GoodData, I can create metrics without froms, without joins, without many things, because I have this metadata information. So this is why. And finally, the analytics itself. This is an example of declarative definition of our dashboard. It's not that nice, right? So how it works now, I created all analytical objects in our UI on localhost. It can be running even on your laptop. And then I executed one command and I synchronized the state of the environment to the disk, to these declarative definitions, to YAML files. In the future, actually there is already beta released. We plan to release GoodData IDE plugin into VS Code, and the representation of dashboards and reports will be much nicer. There will be all the IntelliSense, type ahead, and so on. So in the future, even reports and dashboards could be created as code in an easy way. So, this is an example how you can work on your laptop, on your localhost. This is actually an example of how you execute dbt. I created some convenience for these data engineers. In this case, a make file. So they, instead of running dbt run with many arguments, they can just execute make transform. That's all. And this is the CI/CD pipeline. In my case, in GitLab, this is a merge request representing this particular change. You can see a green pipeline on the top and green pipeline on the bottom. So the top one is before merge, and the bottom one is after merge. And this is how it looks like. So this is the pre-merge pipeline, actually not related to this change because I wanted to show you all jobs which can be executed in the pipeline. So generally, you have to build Docker images because there is no Docker image for dbt which satisfies my needs with all the plugins I need. So I need to build my own. The same for Meltano, the same for GoodData, where I embed our dbt GoodData plugin. We rename it. Now it's GoodData dbt, sorry. So once these artifacts are built and pushed to a Docker repository, extract, load, transform, and the analytics parts are executed in two versions, actually. One with dbt core and one with dbt cloud. I added it because this conference, yeah. And this is an example of log of one of these jobs. This is actually the job delivering into dbt cloud with our GoodData dbt plugin. So I just need to execute the plugin with command dbt cloud run, and it executes a job through dbt cloud API, and then it collects all the metadata about how the execution was done. And this is how it looks like. Actually, you can see the link to the dbt cloud job in this log, and this is how it looks like in dbt cloud UI. And last but not least, I also tried to integrate additional dbt cloud APIs. It was quite tough, to be honest. And this is the result. I can back propagate the result from dbt cloud to my merge request, put a comment into the merge request that there is some kind of degradation, that some of these dbt models degraded, their performance degraded, their last duration time was highly above the average of, let's say, last 5 or 10 jobs. And that's it. And what is the result? So the result is obviously this dashboard, but not only this dashboard. We can expose the same semantic layer, can I say it, to Streamlit application. thanks to our Python SDK, which can communicate not only with our metadata, but also with our execution APIs. So you can execute the same report in completely different ecosystem. And obviously, there shouldn't be a presentation without AI nowadays. So let me introduce you our chatbot. So you can ask about these workflow runs in a chat experience as a business persona, let's say. And it works. It's basically, maybe I would like to emphasize what is our approach. So our approach is that we fine-tune large language models with our semantic model. So each customer has their semantic model, and for each customer, we fine-tune LLM. Okay. Everything is perfect, right? Except. So, most painful for me personally is that there is no unified configuration for the whole end-to-end data stack. You have configuration for dbt with profiles. Then in dbt cloud, profiles are represented differently. Then you have the same information about the same data source in Meltano, and then also in GoodData, and every tool has completely different configuration. That's really horrible. So I'm thinking about to implement some open source project to cover this, and basically have one configuration, and from that generate Meltano, dbt, whatever configuration, because really it's painful. The second problem, the stability of connectors. This is related to Meltano. You can freeze versions of connectors now with version 3.0. That's good. But still, from time to time, it doesn't work. Missing dbt cloud SDK. There is no SDK for dbt. It's developer tool, so successful, so popular, and there is no SDK. How it is possible? And last but not least, there is a problem with pre-merge phase, which is actually related to compliance. Yeah? Because, especially in my open source repository, anybody can create a pull request. And in this pull request, he can echo, or he or she can echo some sensitive variable. That's a problem. Yeah? So most of the time, people are not testing heavily in pre-merge phase because this compliance problem. So the question is how to solve this problem. And don't blame open source. This is related, for instance, to the Meltano problem. So if you are not satisfied with some connector, contribute to open source. Do not implement custom scripts loading, transforming whatever data. Please. Okay, we are almost in the end. So what are my follow-ups in my mind for this blueprint? So make it production ready. My solution is still quite naive. I'm thinking about to use tools like Dexter or Mage for the orchestration. I'm thinking about to utilize some serverless functionalities in AWS or our Kubernetes deployment. This should scale much better than to run everything in GitLab workers. Data governance, obviously. Yeah, collect all the metadata from dbt, from Meltano, from everything, and have end-to-end lineage. Yeah. LLM must be here. In my case, I would like to use it to transform GitLab pipelines to GitHub pipelines. I don't want to do it manually. Really, no, I don't. And it should be definitely feasible, yeah, because it's open source how it works. And even generate these pipelines using LLM. If you fine-tune them, it shouldn't be a problem to write a document, design document, and say, I want to crawl these data. I want to transform them so they are in star model, ready for analytics. And I want to prepare these dashboards. and then let's say 80% of the source code should be generated correctly, and the rest will be polished by a person, but you still save a lot of time. This should be definitely feasible nowadays. Okay, but did Teresa, Marek, Eva succeeded finally? Obviously, the answer is yes. But I was really surprised how productive they were. In a few weeks, they built integration with HubSpot, with Salesforce, with AWS S3, with Google Sheets, and so on. And they created internal BI project, which is used by all our business departments. And they do it very safely, meaning nothing is destroyed in production. They can test everything even before merge. They are really satisfied, and they can iterate very quickly on their laptops in the local environment. So the productivity is incredible. By the way, they also published an article, and they open sourced part of the solution, specifically the integration with the Salesforce. This picture doesn't contain our internal data. They are synthetic, so I'm safe. And that's it. So if you want to try it out, everything this is open source. Yeah. So if you want to try it, scan the QR code on the right, and if you want to have a fun, scan QR code on the right, which is yet another custom data application built on top of our UI SDK and also with A-Frame framework. It's basically a prototype we built in our hackathon, and we visualize data in virtual reality. You can test them even with Oculus Quest. I saw some of them in the hall. And now you can continue.
Yes. Thank you, Jacek. Okay. Round of applause. Thank you. I will keep this short. Come say hello. Booth 120 in the exhibitor hall. Get a demo, talk to us. We're friendly. We have a henna tattoo artist, if that's your thing. So come by tomorrow and get a henna tattoo. We've got lots of swag. And then, is there one more slide?
Yeah. Last slide.
Last slide. Data Maverick tomorrow night. Kansas City Barbecue. A number of vendors are sponsoring this. Us, Upsolver, a few others. So come over and say hello, eat some BBQ, and hang out. And thank you for coming today and being such a gracious audience.